Buying tickets to sports and concerts can be complicated, but there is a better way to buy with SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to every type of live event. And right now, get $20 off your first purchase. Just download the SeatGeek app and enter promo code WINGO today.
I'm Jason Fitz. It's Golic and Wingo.
Yeah.
Elle, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing fantastic. Fitz, we're like two ships passing in a night. We're both kind of on the same thing, right? We're both, definitely on the same thing, but we never get to actually work together. I just have to watch you from afar and admire. So it's nice to sit next to you and actually talk.
Well, we're going to spend the next 4 hours hanging out. Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. She's Elle Duncan. I'm Jason Fitz. We're in for the guys. Presented as always by Progressive Insurance. Phone guests appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And yes, it's always scary. It's always scary. Everybody can tweet us. The 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed at Golic and Wingo, at Jason Fitz, and at Elle Duncan ESPN. Release the hounds. This is just.
I was going to say, it's Christmas. Keep that in mind.
Oh, no. And you can't go there now because earlier, Elle comes in this morning. We're hanging out. We're getting ready for the show. Elle comes in and she goes all bah humbug on the usage of Merry Christmas post-Christmas. So you don't get to use that now.
I feel like Christmas is over on the 25th. And so on the 26th, when someone says Merry Christmas, I just feel like that's inaccurate and that we should move on. There is still another holiday to enjoy. So say Happy New Year or Happy Holidays because that is all encompassing. Christmas is past.
My tree is still up. Therefore, the magic
No, that's okay. You can leave the tree up through at least March. However, I feel like you should move on from Merry Christmas after Christmas.
Till March. That's good. I can cross that off my to-do list then. So I do want to ask you, before we get off the top, I have to ask you a travel etiquette question.
Here we go.
Okay,
all right, I'm ready.
Yesterday, I flew from Nashville, which has been my home for 20 years, to Bristol, Connecticut, which now will be my home moving forward.
What an upgrade.
Such an upgrade. So I get on my flight. You know, I booked, I was careful with the holiday. I booked around making sure I could get out at the right time so I get here and do all of these things. So, I'm on a Southwest flight and, love all airlines. All airlines are spectacular, but you know how that works. Like you have to pick your seat, right? 100%. So I come trotting in on my first flight and I'm like, here we go. And, it'd been a little bit crazy and I look in and it's a choose your own adventure. So I look and there's an exit row window seat and I'm like, oh, this is going to be good.
Sweet.
Right? Yeah. I'm happy because I was like B44. So I'm like, I don't know how I lucked into this.
Wow.
So I look at the kind couple and I say, is anyone sitting there? No. Okay. So I make my way into the seat and I sit down. It had been a little bit hectic with the travel and I had a couple of iced coffees. So we get into the air and anybody that's heard me on any ESPN radio platform knows I pee a lot during the shows. So I got a small bladder. I got to pee. So we get to the air and I'm debating in my mind the whole time. I'm like, do I pee? Do I not pee? Do I pee? Do I not pee? I don't want to inconvenience them. But finally I realized, look, with my luck, we get stuck on if we get stuck somewhere like waiting to get into the gate or whatever.
Yeah, on the tarmac. Or
right. I'm going to pee my pants. So I can't have that. So finally I look at the kind couple next to me and I say, I'm so sorry. I need to get out. And the husband and wife, they both, they've got their iPads in front of them. They look at me and they go, oh. And then they proceed to put their trays up so that they have to hold their iPads. And they do this like little tiny knee move. Now we're in an exit row. I realize that. And I realize I'm not a big guy, but now I have to make the conscious decision to grab the chair in front of me because there's not really enough room. Like inconvenience that person and then like squeeze my way between two strangers to go pee. I do this and I pee. And then as I come back, I think, you know what? Benefit of the doubt on the way back in, they'll help me out. No, same thing to the opposite side, tiny knee move to the side. And I'm looking at it thinking now I've got to make the decision. Like, am I turning in the aisle? Am I turning near my seat? Like I got to get again, I've got my whole upper body pressed to some stranger in front of me while I grab their chair for balance.
Which is very rude.
And I squeeze through. Like I think even though I picked the window seat and I realized I had to pee, I think we need an etiquette reminder in America. Like, get up, get out of your exit row seat, and let everybody get out when they have to pee.
100%. Listen, when you choose, first of all, what freaks choose the middle and then the aisle as opposed to a window? That's a whole other conversation.
Correct.
But when you choose the aisle seat, when you willingly choose it, you understand that you act as a gate and you must get up every time someone has to go to the bathroom. Sometimes you luck out and they don't have to go. But sometimes you sit next to someone with a small bladder. I always feel uncomfortable in those situations too because I never know when you're trying to squeeze through people. Do you go frontal and put your front in front of their face, or do you go back and put your back in front of their face? And those kinds of situations always creep me out to no end.
And this is one of those moments where being really, if I was a big guy, I was Husky, I would have gotten out of the aisle, but because I'm not, now I have to make this decision.
Which way did you go?
I went butt to stranger's face. That's how I had to do it while I'm holding on to some chair in front of me because let's face it, I'm not all that coordinated. So trying to hold on to somebody because the last thing I want to do is give a stranger a lap dance on a flight. So I'm trying to make sure I can stand up. So
real fast. Would the situation have changed if they had both been asleep? Because when the people next to me are asleep, I do feel very bad waking them up.
I don't get up unless it's we're in operation, gotta pee. Like
Gotcha.
it's full, we're in full mode. Like I feel like the guy in the aisle has made the conscious decision he would get up, and I in the window have made the conscious decision.
It's a gentleman's agreement.
And my agreement is I will not go unless I have to.
Right.
So the minute I tap you, but especially if you're sitting there, we're just to the 10,000 feet, a little-ish.
Yeah, you're good. You're not asleep.
Yeah, and you're watching a movie. Like, I'm sorry, I ruined your holiday movie for 3 seconds making you get up, but it's not very Christmassy to make me grab the chair.
It really isn't. You should have just gone right there in your seat, and then they would have hated that too.
You can chime in on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed and let us know if we've lost our mind. It is now time, of course, to get this whole thing rolling.
It's time for Off the Top.
Whether you like it or not, it's just beginning.
With Golic and Wingo.
We will start with some Steelers-Patriots news. Ex-Steeler James Harrison signs with the Patriots. Harrison released Saturday, cleared waivers Monday, scooped up on Tuesday by the Patriots.
Everyone saw this coming. Like, as soon as it happened, it was like, wouldn't it be the most Patriots thing in the world to take him and sign him off waivers and make him a Patriot? And I'm not surprised by this at all. I also, though, Fitz, do not buy into the narrative in any way that they need James Harrison to pick his brain for a potential matchup in the playoffs. Tom Brady owns this team. He has no issues beating the Patriots. I think this is just kind of what they do. They sign disgruntled players. If you're James Harrison, this is a layup. You're probably going to get a ring. He's not going to offer it. This whole thing, like, oh, can you imagine he gets a sack and it sends the Patriots? He played 40 snaps this year. Y'all sit down. 40 snaps. I love James Harrison, but y'all stop.
And let's be fair. What is James Harrison going to teach Bill Belichick that Bill Belichick doesn't already know? I think we can all agree on that. It just does feel very Patriot-esque to sign a guy that you know somehow in a key in that moment in the AFC Championship, James Harrison's going to have the one play of the entire calendar year that matters, and then we're all going to throw our hands up and say, what is the voodoo doll? What's the magic for the Patriots? I don't know.
It's going to just lend more credence to the whole game. Is it Bill? Is it Brady? Which is a conversation that I'm very tired of having.
Oh, good thing is we can be saved by this.
Off the Top.
Next up, Josh Rosen sits out the Cactus Bowl due to concussions. Rosen, a top NFL prospect, officially ruled out just before kickoff of UCLA's Cactus Bowl versus Kansas State.
Yeah, he's had a couple of concussions this season. The second one did come in the regular season finale, so it was just a couple of weeks ago. And he says that this isn't about the 2018 NFL draft because he hasn't declared yet. So he's going to discuss it with his parents after the bowl game, which I'm not buying at all. He's going to the draft. But I like this. Listen, this bowl doesn't mean anything. I mean, yeah, it's a football game, and yay, is it on our air? It means a lot. It means a lot. However, in terms of like,
who knew you were such a good moonwalker right there? You were just walking that thing on back.
That thing back. It is an incredible game, and you should watch it on ESPN and the ESPN app. However, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't mean anything. And so why not?
We'll get into this a little later because I'm with you. Why play the bowl game? But I am curious about what this will mean for the future of Josh Rosen, which we'll get into. But obviously we still have more
Off the Top.
You see how good I've gotten at that? Like I can say more and then hit the drop. Yeah,
in the post.
Total pro. One of the 4 bowl games. Speaking of bowl games, on Wednesday features Texas taking on Missouri in the Academy Sports and Outdoors Texas Bowl at 9 Eastern on ESPN. Missouri quarterback Drew Lock has an SEC single season record 43 passing touchdowns this year. That's a lot.
Listen, a great game. I am most interested in the fact that Texas is going to be without some of their stars, who have either been suspended or are choosing to sit out. Among them, tight end Garrett Gray, running back Tennille Carter, and my personal favorite, Jason Fitz, and we did some fact checking. This is in fact his real name. If you're not familiar with Texas roster, Lil Jordan Humphrey.
Lil Jordan.
Lil. And let's be clear, guys. It's not little. It's Lil, like Lil Wayne. Lil apostrophe Jordan Humphrey. Now, how do you suppose that one comes across a name like Lil Jordan?
Oh, that's such a good question. Can I be Lil Jason for the rest of the show?
You can be
Lil
Fitz.
Fitz. Lil Fitz. We'll go.
Lil Fitz. That'll work. See, it works for Lil Jordan because he isn't Lil. He's 6'5". I'm not saying you're slight of stature. I'm just saying you're not giant, so it isn't ironic in this case. And so, like, maybe a little bit of a check to your manhood to call yourself Lil when you're not really big.
I don't know. I mean, the people in the exit row thought I could fit in very small spaces. Last up.
Off the top.
The Thunder have won 5 straight games. That's the longest active win streak in the NBA. They host the Raptors on Wednesday. The Thunder have turned this thing around, right?
Yeah, 1-9 in games featuring clutch time minutes in their first 10 such games of the season. They're now 9-1 over their last 10 such games. I think we probably panicked a little bit too early. Like, we just assumed you're going to take these 3 big, huge megastars. I'm not the only one. I'm not patting myself on the back here, Fitz, but like the first thing I thought was you're taking 3 dudes that are used to playing hero ball and being like the guy, and Carmelo might be the president of hero ball, and you're trying to put them on a new team together. This isn't going to work at first.
But the problem with that, I think, for everybody is it feels like it's working around the rest of the NBA. I mean, the NBA as a whole, look at the Rockets, but the NBA as a whole, everything that was supposed to happen from summer free agency has happened. It feels like the league is more interesting, even though we know who's going to win the championship.
Sure.
So even though we know how this thing's going to turn out, likely it's turned out to at least be interesting, compelling during the regular season, right?
Absolutely.
And the exception to that is the Thunder, who were expected to immediately be something. So I think right now Lakers fans are all a little bit, they need to be a little puckered up now, because the better the Thunder get, the more chance that they all stay together and it becomes some sort of, the Lakers fans are looking at every single opportunity to pick any star off of any roster and say they're going to come here. So they want these super
Paul
teams.
George is leaving no matter what.
Well,
he's leaving no matter what. He's bouncing. He's tiggering all the way over to LA. That's going to happen. Lakers fans should be excited about Kyle Kuzma and Kyle Kuzma only. And then Paul George will be coming to join Kyle Kuzma very soon. Because the Thunder are, okay, so maybe they'll be a 6 seed, but they're still going to lose in the playoffs. They've got really good defense. They've got playoff caliber defense. And yeah, before January, they're starting to figure it out. But like nobody pays attention to basketball anyway until after February in terms of what that means.
Ratings are way up.
Exactly. But I mean, in terms of like what this means and any implications this could have for the playoffs, they really don't matter until after the break.
Well, that is off the top. I don't know. Is there a button I pressed? No, the music fades out. Look at Mikey C doing a great job. Golic and Wingo presented by Progressive Insurance. Last year, over 3 million drivers switched to Progressive. Call or click today and find out if you could save. So we didn't get to one big story and off the top because we wanted to save it. All of the drama came out of New York yesterday. And this is, I don't know if you guys heard this. Landon Collins yesterday spoke out a little about a teammate. This is what he had to say.
There's only just one corner that has to establish. He needs to grow up, and we all know who that is. That'd be the only person I would change out of our secondary group. Besides the other 2 guys, DRC and Jackrabbit, I love those 2 guys. They play hard. They love what they do. But that first pick, I don't think he's a cancer.
So that is Landon Collins on the Michael K. Show on ESPN 98.7 in New York, and he's obviously talking about Eli Apple. Mm-hmm. And so what you have here is, in what has already been a dysfunctional season for the Giants, and a season that's caused them to really blow up the way they're running things, you now see an example that after you've gotten rid of the GM, after you get rid of the coach, there's still problems in that locker room. Do you have a problem with the guy going on the radio and airing that sort of a grievance? So
here's kind of where I fall on this. I feel like when you get to this point, because this is kind of unorthodox for someone to just flat out call someone a cancer on the same team, in particular on the same unit. What I'd like to believe is maybe this is a last-ditch effort. They've tried and attempted to talk to Eli Apple, and maybe this is the way that they think that they can reach him, right? Like, we've tried to do this in-house. We've tried to do it behind closed doors. Now it's time to take this to mixed company and kind of do a court of public opinion. And it pressures Eli in terms of it's public. You're going to get public pressure now, fan pressure now, pressure on the front office, pressure on ownership to do this and to fix something. And so I'd like to believe that this is a long time coming and maybe something that is built up for a long time. And he feels like this is the only thing he has left to do, which is to make this public.
So every time somebody goes to New York to play, you hear this conversation about the bubble of sports and being an athlete in New York. Mm-hmm. What I'm trying to figure out is this a story because they're in the bubble of New York? I mean, if it was, for example, a Titans player, again, coming from Nashville, if a Titans player called another Titans player a cancer, would it be this big of a deal? Are we just blowing out of proportion because it's the Giants at some point? Because what you have is a guy that's in Eli Apple, a guy that's been insignificant to the product on the field this year. And that's its own issue. But so what? You're calling a guy that's insignificant a cancer. Who cares? But because it's the Giants, I feel like we're completely invested in this.
But I think outside of the fact that it's the Giants and it's a big market team, I think that's the point, is that this whole team, at least from our purview, looks like a cancer. They're not a good team. There is problems on this team from top to bottom, starting with ownership and going all the way down. And so for you to pick someone out like Eli Apple and say, he's the problem specifically, not the coaching decisions that were made, not this, not that, not the offense, not the running game, not the defense, but this in particular, this guy in particular, I do think it's unorthodox for someone to come out and very blatantly call someone on his team a cancer, in particular when that person is in their second year and apparently going through some family issues, because that's the whole other part of this story, Fitz, is that maybe Eli Apple is having a bad year because of some off the field, some personal issues that he's facing.
Now, we're going to get into this later on today. By the way, Chris Canty, ESPN New York, going to join us at 9 o'clock. We have a huge guest list today. Field Yates at 7, Marcus Spears at 8, Mina Kimes at 8:30. Chris Canty, as I mentioned, at 9. If you miss any of the guests, you can listen to all 4 hours of Golic and Wingo on demand in the ESPN app. She's Elle Duncan. I'm Jason Fitz. We're in for the guys today. And I think it's an interesting situation to be in because I'm trying to figure out where the wheels fell off for this entire process for the Giants, because we want to forget the fact that if we go back to last summer, I just talked about how last summer paid off for the NBA. Last summer, there were a lot of expectations that the Giants were going to at least be a good football team. Maybe not a great football team, but a good football team. And the wheels have fallen off. Now, when that happens to this degree, I don't know that you can ever blame one person. But doesn't this speak to some level of you're going to have to clean house on all of it to figure out how to rebuild it? And that's unfortunate because, as you mentioned, in Eli, you have somebody that Eli Apple, to be clear about who we're talking about, the other Eli. You have somebody that by some reports is dealing with, family illness issues. I don't know that there's a real way you're expected to handle that. I mean, there isn't some application. How you handle that is totally different than how I handle that. And how I handle that at 40 is totally different than how I would have handled that at 23 or 24. I think that there's stages in life. We're asking for a player, if it is in fact based on family issues, we're asking for all of our players to handle family issues the same. It's a very difficult situation. I don't know what the solution is, but there isn't an easy solution.
You're talking about someone who at the start of the year was 22 years old, a top 10 pick, like you said, under the bright lights of New York with all of these expectations. And expectations are going to come when you're top 10 pick no matter where you go, whether you're in Cleveland or New York. Obviously, the microscope's a lot bigger.
Not in Cleveland. That's right.
Okay, well, that's true. Although Myles Garrett's done a very good job. But I think that you're talking about a lot of factors, that being that it sounds like Eli Apple has some maturing to do, right? The maturation process doesn't click in with everyone right away. I know 35-year-old men that need a lot of maturing and aren't under these kinds of not under this kind of pressure. But I think I do think off the field stuff comes into play. And I just have a really brief anecdote. Years ago when I did radio, we had this huge event every year where we brought all these fans in and all these listeners, and it was our opportunity to meet them and thank them, and it was a concert, and it was this whole thing. As I'm walking into this event where there's going to be 100,000 listeners at it, my father tells me that my grandfather was diagnosed with prostate cancer. This is literally as I'm walking in the door, Fitz. And so within 90 seconds, I'm trying to process this. I'm walking into this event, and this mom and child walk up to me, and they're like, we listen to the show all the time, and we're fans. Do you think you could take a picture? And again, I'm trying to choke back tears, and I'm trying to beeline for the bathroom because I've just found this kind of devastating news out. And so I thought at the time was exchanging niceties and was being polite and said, I'm so sorry. I can't right now. Can you just give me a minute? And I walk off. This woman didn't know what I was going through. However, she for the next month tried to make my life hell. She wrote to my station. She would try to talk to the newspapers. there was no really like Twitter then. It was more Facebook, but she did everything that she could to damage my reputation because she felt I big-timed her, because she felt like I was a monster for what I did to her and her family. I broke her child's heart. What kind of person am I? I don't deserve any of the blessings I've been giving because she didn't know. And so again, that tiny little small example, I try to give people the benefit of the doubt and say that we can't all compartmentalize bad and terrible news in the same way.
It's an interesting, and you're very right about that. And that's one of the interesting things about this, because we all want to jump on the fact that a guy that we've seen be not active and be not a part of the game plan week in and week out for the Giants, this must be the big explanation. Ultimately, the first and foremost, the Giants got to figure out how to get their locker room right.
Correct.
And that may or may not include Eli Apple. Then he's going to have to figure out how to get his life right.
Correct.
And there's still opportunity for him to go out.
He's 23.
There's opportunity for him to go somewhere and be a fantastic player. Yep. It's just, it feels like one of those moments where the entire Giants organization needs to be power washed.
Yes.
And just scrubbed down.
Correct.
And restarted. So,
which is a shame for a team that was in the playoffs last year. But.
Yeah. Well, but that's the nature of the beast in the NFL.
Life happens. With ADT, you can feel safe with an ADT starter kit professionally installed for only $49. Call today and install an ADT starter kit that includes security panel, keypad, key fob, entry and motion sensors, and for a limited time, get a camera included and installed at no additional cost. That's a $449 value installed for just $49.
Requires 36-month monitoring contract, USB, and EasyPay activation. Early term fees may apply. Certain marks excluded. License available at ADT.com, Florida EF001121, Louisiana F1639.
Hey girl, have you done something new with your scales? Using new moisturizer? Nice. It really brings out the hazel in your eyes. Oh, hold on. Are you using whitening strips too? Your fangs look good, girl. Really good.
A really charming snake charmer? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
Wait, what? Have you been doing Pilates too?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Golic and Wingo. Clearly not Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. I'm Elle Duncan. He's Jason Fitz. We're hanging in for the guys here today. We have encouraged you to tweet the show, much to our own chagrin, 1-800-Flowers.com. The Twitter feed, at Golic and Wingo. You can also tweet directly at Fitz, at Jason Fitz, directly at me, at Elle Duncan ESPN. So here's the question that we posed on Twitter, Fitz, that being an experience that you had yesterday on the plane when you were sitting at the window. There was a person a married couple in the middle, an aisle seat, and God forbid you had to use the restroom to relieve yourself like 15 minutes into the flight. They were awake. There's nothing crazy happened. There was no food or anything like that. And you politely asked if you could go to the restroom, and they refused to actually stand up. They did the side knee thing and made you squeeze out into the aisle. And so we asked if that is acceptable in good airplane etiquette. Emily tweets, depends on how tall you are. I'm 5'2", knees to the side leaves plenty of space.
Now that's a fair point. She's 5'2".
Yeah, us munchkins can get away with that. I'm 5'3".
Well, and if that's true either way. If you're the one sitting and you're very short, you can move the knees to the, I shouldn't say very short. I don't want to imply that you are short, Elle.
I am.
I'm 5'9.5". So it's not like I'm a juggernaut of size. When you're 5'9", you take the half also. So yeah, I'm 5'9.5". When you're my size, you can get through sometimes, but several people have made the point that it depends. If you're a larger person sitting, it's not even an option. You have to get up.
Sure.
And it should be noted, as a few of you pointed out, I should have booked earlier and not gotten a window seat. 1, I wanted a window seat. 2,
that's the preferred. How is that not the preferred seat?
I have no idea. I don't know. I
honestly don't know these people that prefer a middle. I've seen that too on Southwest flights where the window and the aisle are open and the person just willingly sits in the middle. And I don't know if those people have like issues and they they like to be snuggled.
I'm thinking they're holding it. They're holding it for the person on either side of them. It's
okay.
The whole approach.
All right.
See, as a married guy, like I'm constantly thinking like, what would I do in that situation? So like I'd sprawl out and just try and I'd be the wide spreader that's like got arms.
Yeah. You know what I always say on Southwest flights? Every Southwest flight I've ever been on, I'm on my honeymoon.
Oh, wow.
And I'll be like, I'm so sorry. I know we're not supposed to hold seats, but we're on our honeymoon, and can I sit next to my husband and my new husband? And I play that card.
By the way, tall people prefer the aisle for extra legroom. I'm small. I always get hit by the cart. That's all I'm saying. Like, the cart always hits me in the shoulder. I don't know. You know who could take the aisle or the window if he wants? Stephen A. You know, he'll always have more to say. Now he's going national with the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio starting January 2nd. Weekdays from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern on ESPN radio stations across the country and on the ESPN app, Sirius XM, and TuneIn Radio. You do not want to miss any of that. So the NBA has come out, and I don't know if you saw this, El. The NBA came out, and they told the world that they messed up some calls. So what it comes down to is 3 late fouls by Kevin Durant and 1 by LeBron James during Golden State's 99-92 win over Cleveland on Christmas Day. The league came out and said, are bad.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of thoughts here we were discussing as we started to put the show together today. But the biggest thing that still hits me is it's a sign of the health of the NBA, that you can have your stars involved in all sorts of calls that completely, now you come out and you're like, oh, my bad, we screwed up with our biggest stars and we blew some. If this was the NFL and it was we screwed up and we missed a call that should have happened for or against Tom Brady, we would be Kermit the Frog all the way up and down the aisle. It's like arms flailing. We'd be doing that whole thing. We're not. We're coming back and we're like, you know what? Good on them. NBA announcing that they missed calls. That's why they're so progressive as a league.
Okay, I will give you that to a certain extent. I also think it's because these guys play 82 games, and so not one game is significant enough to impact your entire season. You know, like one NFL game is. Like that one game with the Steelers, that questionable call, if you will, could impact whether they have home field advantage through the playoffs, which is a huge advantage. And so I think that we get more up. I think we've also just kind of resigned ourselves to the fact that, like, they're going to make a lot of missed calls. Like, LeBron's going to be allowed to travel, and like, you can't breathe on him or you're going to get called on a foul. And Steph Curry is going to have the benefit of the doubt and going to be able to flop. Paul Pierce can flop, and that's okay, because like, that's what Paul Pierce does. I think that we give them a little bit longer of a leash because those games aren't as impactful. Yes, those 3 calls were terrible, Fitz, and they essentially did end up costing the game, right? But at the same time, it's like one of 82 games. That game is not going to come back to bite them come April. It isn't.
Okay, so a couple things. One, I think it feels the NBA comes in and they announce this. So there's a moment where we're like, hey, that's awesome. But to your point of how many games there are, I understand it. But this was Christmas Day.
Sure.
This was your biggest stars.
Sure.
This was the big, like, Christmas Day is the big moment for the NBA where everybody starts saying, oh yeah, the basketball season's going on. So it's a big moment for that. And let me ask you, if it was, let's say right now, a 2-14, by the end of the year, let's say a 2-14 Giants team had won a game over an 0-16 Browns team on a Fail Mary type call, just a blown bad call. Would we not still be obsessing about the problem with officiating, even if it was a result that had nothing to do with the playoff run? We obsess about officiating in the NFL, and we just don't in the NBA.
But I also wonder too if that has to do with the fact that, you know, every single play in the NFL is a physical feat. Every single play, someone's putting their body on the line. And so to have mess ups, to have things called back on phantom offensive holding calls, to have touchdowns or back, like every play is so incredibly significant. You run 100 plays in the NBA, in each NBA game, right? Like it's not one possession. Yes. And at the end of the game, obviously the possessions are more significant, but one possession, typically a bad call here, a bad call there, you can overcome that in the NBA if it's a close game. And in the NFL, you can't, not necessarily. And I just think that maybe it also has to do with the nature of the NFL and the game as a whole and what it requires. Every single play, every single series requires so much that it is much more significant to blow those.
But there's only one of the 2 leagues we're discussing that's actually had a referee imprisoned for throwing games.
Very true.
I mean, you got one league where it's like, hey, this guy went to jail and wrote a book, you know, and I hear books are I wait till they become movies.
I've read the book.
I don't know.
It was very entertaining.
When they make a movie on it, I'm so in
You're in Cliff Notes.
Is there an audio book version
Probably.
of it?
I would imagine.
I'll
Personal foul. Look it up.
Yeah, I'll put my headphones on and bother the people next to me on the flight while I listen to it. No, I mean, you've got a book about the way that referees were acting in the NBA, and I'm not saying that's what's happening today. but it still at least cracks open the door of perception, right? And so there's some moment in perception where I'm looking at it and saying one league should have a perception problem. The other league, we are just overanalyzing everything that happens for the NFL. Like, refs blow calls. Do I think that the refs had a vested interest in the outcome of Golden State Cleveland on Christmas Day? No. I don't believe that for a second. And this whole, and I see people all over Twitter say it, and they've said it about the NFL officiating too. Nobody goes to a game to watch a referee. That's true, but refs are there to call fouls. So they're going to make mistakes. They're human. They're going to miss some things. No quarterback completes every pass. They're just going to screw up. But at some point we just forgive it for them because they do awesome things like put out a report.
But look at what we even did after this last questionable game with the Patriots, right? Against the Bills. On SportsCenter, which is my full-time gig. What did we do? We went back and looked at all the questionable calls that benefited the Patriots starting at the beginning of the year and the Seahawks and that questionable touchdown call that was overturned, which could potentially impact the Seahawks and whether they even make the playoffs because every single series, every called back touchdown is that significant in the NFL and has so many ramifications when you only play 16 games. And I think the stakes are just higher. I don't think it has anything to do with just the NBA being healthy as a league. I think people appreciate the honesty, right? But at the same time, like, you can overcome some bad plays. You can overcome really bad officiating in more than one game and your season will not be lost. And that is not the case in the NFL.
And I understand that. And I get what you're saying, but this moment of just the way culture reacts to a blown call in the NBA is curious to me. I mean, it's curious to me that you've got Durant and LeBron, and they're both obviously huge. I think that's part of it. We've gotten used to a very physical version of the NBA. So what is a foul today? It is interesting because I think if you're younger than me, you grew up in an era where I think NBA guys felt a little smaller and it didn't feel as wide, I should say. So, but I grew up, as a kid, I grew up watching the bad boy era of the Pistons and Celtics and those guys did everything but murder each other on the court. So like this, what is a foul? What isn't a foul ride for the NBA changes generationally. We're in a generation now where the athleticism of these guys, the width of these guys, it feels like we can watch them just bang on each other and have no idea what is or isn't a foul. So the NBA didn't even have to say anything. I mean, if the NBA didn't say anything, we wouldn't be talking about it anyway. They did say something and we somehow turned it into a positive. Like it feels a little bit at this point where it's like you came in and you cheated on your wife, but you're like, hey, I put it in a report and everybody's like, oh, well, that's good. It's look at that. He reported it.
He was so honest about it.
Yeah. Like you got the one league that's been busted that writes a report about it. And so we're like, look at that. The NBA is so on top of it. And then you got the guys on the other side that are constantly saying, I don't know what else. Like, I don't look at the NFL.
They defend them.
I don't think the NFL isn't doing anything they should be doing. The only thing I would ask in all sports across the board, it's my annual rant, is make ref stats public. That's the one thing I want. I want them to turn around and make NFL ref stats and NBA ref stats. Like when they introduce you to the refs, tell me how many calls they missed. Tell me how many calls they got right. If they're graded after every single game, as we constantly hear in every sport, show me the grade. That's all I'm asking for.
So we were told that there is like that. There's it's called thecovers.com or something like that.
Yeah, there's websites.
And you can look and they will tell you how many, tell you trends. They'll tell you trends. And we do have those same trends. And, Adam Schefter said that about before the Patriots-Steelers game. Like, watch, these guys like to call a lot of offensive pass interference calls. And so, you can look at trends and what officiating crews like to do.
I want more than trends. I want accuracy percentage. If the league comes in and reviews every play in every sport like we're told, then they must have this guy's right 84% of the time. And then
he's got a C average.
Then we could see like what is, okay, if you just looked in a bubble and you said, man, this guy completes 63% of his passes. We might look at that and say that's not all that good.
Sure.
But when you start to look at completion percentage, not in a bubble, and you see what it is against other completion percentages, I think there's opportunity for that. We could turn around and we could sort of change the world right here. Golic and Wingo, Elle Duncan, Jason Fitz. We'll change the world by having sports and especially the leagues themselves. If they analyze these guys, just make your analysis of it public. Then everything's above the board.
I'm not against that at all.
Look at that. We're changing everything.
Blue Moon is brewed with Valencia orange peel and a touch of coriander. It's a creative twist on a Belgian-style wheat ale for a taste that shines brighter. Taste responsibly. Blue Moon Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
It's Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. She's Elle Duncan. I'm Jason Fitz. We're in for the guys. You can tweet the show. using the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at Golic and Wingo, at Jason Fitz, at Elle Duncan, ESPN. How do the guys react to this song? Because like this song, so far, the Bump Bap Music has had us dancing and singing. I don't feel like Trey's much of a singer or dancer with this stuff.
You guys play Big Pimpin'?
Is there
yeah.
All right, we're getting some Big Pimpin'.
We're getting thumbs up.
Is Trey a mover and a shaker on said Big Pimpin'? I don't know. I'm usually in bed when
I know Golic Jr. definitely reacts to all the music that is played as his in-bump music and like in his outro music. I know that. Being that I'm from Atlanta, for the culture, can we play some Migos? Can we get...
Whoa. I didn't come in here and say being I'm from Nashville, can I get some Blake Shelton? All right. You're in there making
you're
requests.
Doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong.
That is
I will settle on 2 Chainz, but let's make that happen.
Wow.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
What happened to 1 Chain? Anyway, I don't know.
Dad joke. Oh, man.
I'm a dog dad, so that counts,
there
right?
It is.
I'm tragically unhip. Everybody knows that. Twitter's reminding me of that all morning.
Me too, dude.
Thank you to all the well-wishers that have decided.
Christmas spirit.
We've gotten everything from we're the 4th string to we're destroying the legacy of Golic and Wingo. You guys really need a Christmas hug
No. Destroying the legacy of Mike and Mike. I had to conveniently remind them we're doing Golic and Wingo. Someone said, you're destroying the 18 years that they built. And I said, well, this show's been on for like a month. So at the very least, we're ruining a month of hard work.
Well, you know who's going to ruin hard work? Possibly James Harrison. You like that? You like that segue?
Look at that segue.
Thank you
What
very
a
much.
turn.
I'll be here all week, literally. So James Harrison, you're welcome, America. James Harrison he was cut by the Steelers, played like, 4.5 snaps and watched a bunch of football all year. Cut by the Steelers, clears the waiver wire, and then he is signed by the Patriots, which is the most Patriots move of all things Patriots. And actually, Jonathan Vilma talked about it. This is what Vilma had to say.
Bill Belichick, he's a coach that does the game within the game. So what does that mean? He wants to look at not just the scheme, but what player is going to give away the defense, what player is going to give away run pass on offense. He wants to know about each individual person and who's been there the longest, James Harrison. Who knows that offensive line better than anybody? James Harrison. So he's going to go in and say, look, this guy tilts this way when it's a run. This guy leans this way when it's a pull or a pass. And those are the type of things that Bill Belichick can take and then now express that to his offense or defense to get that little edge.
The Patriots need some help edge rushing. Last couple of weeks, they've not been strong on third down.
I'll stop you there.
This is all intel.
It's all intel.
It's interesting to me, one, that he's acquiescing that's all intel. I mean, that's what they're saying. Hey, this guy gives nothing on the field, but he's going to give you some sort of an edge. And I understand that we want to find that because we're like, it's Belichick and there's going to be some big edge. But he's Belichick. And if we buy into the narrative that he is the greatest single football coach of all time, what intel does he need at this point that he's not going to guard? I mean, in theory, he's giving anybody else intel. Nobody's giving him intel at this point, right?
The Steelers have never beat the Patriots in the playoffs. I love Vilma too. I don't think this is, I don't know what this is about because I agree with him that it isn't about the on-field stuff. Like 40 snaps this year in 14 games for James Harrison. The last time and the only time we talk about James Harrison is when he's like pulling tractors with his teeth, but less about what he's doing on the field. I don't think he needs any intel. I really don't. I mean, yeah, the Steelers offense is fantastic and they have never faced a Steelers offense in terms of all of the weapons that they have, that 3-headed monster in their receiving core coupled with Le'Veon Bell. And obviously they did a really good job in that game a couple of weeks ago that essentially came down to a questionable call. But I don't think that that's why you took a flyer out on James Harrison.
Maybe he's just being progressive at this point, because Golic and Wingo, presented by Progressive Insurance, all phone guests appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance line. And it's an interesting process to be in because I think the way my mind looks at it, knowing the way coaches work in the NFL, and I'm friends with coaches in the past that have been on staffs just to analyze film of upcoming opponents. So there's already a whole staff working on this. I'm having a hard time figuring out what James Harrison is going to give this staff that the staff doesn't already have.
So we just got an interesting note from the control room that maybe this is about Kansas City, who they could face in the divisional round. Harrison has had success against Chiefs left tackle Eric Fisher. So maybe this isn't about Pittsburgh at all. Maybe it's about some of the outliers and the teams that they don't play often,
I mean, there's a lot of guys that have had success against Eric Fisher so far. Been a rough go for him. I'm just saying. Coming up, what advantage do the Patriots have with James Harrison? Field Yates, one of our favorite, joins us next. It's Golic and Wingo with Elle Duncan. I'm Jason Fitz on ESPN Radio and ESPN2.